Hi everyone, this is Keith Bates. I'm presenting the ongoing professional development for marriage celebrants registered by the Peace Apostolic Network. This is my first attempt at doing a video, and it's a bit of a steep learning curve for me. It's going to be fairly basic this time because of that steep learning curve, but I'm hoping to get more and more professional, or at least quality, with future productions. What my intention is that we will do maybe one or two of these each year, and then that will fulfill our ongoing training requirements for the Department of the Attorney General's Department, for their assurances that people are kept up to date. So I think the procedure that we've agreed on with Maury is that when I've uploaded this to YouTube, he will then notify all the marriage celebrants in the network, and they will be asked to reply to him when they have got their when they've viewed the video, and he'll keep a record of who's up to date and who isn't. So let's start, shall we? The first topic today is the monitem. The monitem is, I've been talking to John Alley about this a fair bit. It's the phrase, the sentences that the Attorney General's Department, in fact the Marriage Act, requires Commonwealth registered celebrants to say at the beginning of each service. And it says it's three sentences. I'm duly authorised by law to solemnise marriages according to law. Before you are joined in marriage in my presence and in the presence of these witnesses, I am to remind you of the solemn and binding nature of the relationship into which you are now about to enter. Marriage according to law in Australia is the union of a man and a woman to the exclusion of all others, voluntarily entered into for life. And the problem with this is that while there's nothing actually wrong with those words as such, they're pretty ugly. And if you look at the order of service that we've put together, we've tried to make it strongly reliant on the traditions of the church through hundreds of years, really, and what has been developed is not just statements that are true, but statements that are beautiful. So John and I have been talking about the monitem and what to do about it, and the good news is that you don't actually have to say it, which came as a surprise to me. In fact, the Marriage Act only says that certain state officials and celebrants registered by the Commonwealth have to say those words, and now that we are a denomination, each celebrant under our jurisdiction is actually registered under their respective state government. So we do not have to say the monitem, which is good news. And in fact, when we get around to updating the official order of service that we submit to the Attorney General's Department, perhaps later in 2015, that section will be completely removed, and there will be no hint that anybody ever knew about it, and it certainly won't be a requirement. So keep that in mind if you're celebrating any weddings in the next little while. It doesn't have, those words no longer have to be said. Now on to a different topic, but again a legal topic, is the fact that from July of 2014 there were a number of amendments issued to the Marriage Act, and those affect us in different ways. One important thing is that you have to update your marriage stationery, that is the official certificates that are sent to the Attorney General's Department, the Births, Deaths and Marriages Registrar in your state. Those are the ones that come in the form of a book with the statutory declarations on the back of each form. So those have to be updated. The official the certificates that you hand each couple the prettier version, that also has to be updated, and there are some other forms as well. So if you haven't yet ordered those forms, I suggest you do so as soon as possible. Strictly, you are required to start using them as of the 1st of January 2015. So you can order those from CanPrint. Go online to canprint.com.au and order those updated forms. And while you're at it, order some of those happily ever after forms, and which are the brochures that you give to each couple explaining the nature of marriage. That's a requirement under the Marriage Act. And you can order envelopes that are pre-printed with the address of your state births, deaths and marriages registrar. You can order those as well. It's a good thing to order things all together, because they do impose a fairly hefty $8 postage fee. So try and get all of those things that you might need in the one go. Another change to the Marriage Act means that you can now use Australian passports as proof of identity. Previously you had to have a birth certificate if the person was born in Australia, and sometimes people lose their birth certificates, and you can now use a passport. Previously the Attorney General's Department has said, well, it's not too hard for people to get a birth certificate if they were born in Australia, but now they've relented a bit on that, and a passport is now considered a suitable document. There are caveats to that. A current passport is obviously always suitable. One that's expired is always suitable, but one that has been cancelled is not, because it may have been cancelled because it was stolen and then and forged, a new name or new information put on it. So a current passport or a passport that's recently expired is okay, and the person doesn't have to find a birth certificate if they don't have one. However, this does not extend to statutory declarations. If a person was born in Australia, there should be no hindrance to them getting a birth certificate or a passport, and a statutory declaration is only acceptable if they were born overseas and there are good reasons why they can no longer obtain their birth certificate from that overseas country. So they're the big changes. The monitem no longer required. Passports can be used instead of birth certificates, and new forms required. Now, the Attorney General's Department is asking Celebrants to re-look over the whole issue of foreign marriages this year for their ongoing professional development. So I'm just going to give you a brief rundown on that. I suggest that you check out the Handbook for Marriages, or the Guidebook for Celebrants as it's now called. You can download that from the Attorney General's Department, which is ag.gov.au/celebrants, and you'll find there a link to the Guidebook for Marriage Celebrants. I suggest you download that and just have a quick look over, because it does give you a lot of information about things that come up sometimes that you may not always be necessarily sure about the answers to. And one issue of that is the whole issue of foreign marriages. I was surprised when I read over the guidebook this morning to find out that generally foreign marriages are respected or recognised in Australia. So if a couple come to you and say, I was married in, and this happened to me, I was married in Vietnam or Malaysia or somewhere like that, but the government doesn't recognise my marriage, then try and find out more details from them, because the chances are the government does recognise their marriage. According to the Marriage Celebrants Guidebook, it says that the Marriage Act provides that a marriage that is valid under the laws of another country is not recognised as valid in Australia if one or more of the following circumstances apply. A, where one of the parties was already married to someone else. B, where one of the parties was not of marriageable age. Or C, where the parties are too closely related under Australian law. And it does provide for overseas marriages to be recognised in Australia as long as it's a valid marriage. Now, they may not have the legal certificates to back that up, and it can be difficult to get those certificates reissued. And what I suggest you do, if somebody comes to you and says, look, my marriage is not recognised in Australia, we don't have certificates and we can't get them, can you remarry us or do a marriage that is recognised under Australian law? I suggest you go to the Attorney General's Department and find out what they have to say about that. Again, you can the best way of contacting them is by email, and usually within 2 or 3 days, certainly under a week, generally I found they'll get back to you with a definitive ruling on that. But generally the ruling is that marriages, if the people would be validly married if they'd have been married in Australia, their marriage from overseas would be recognised by Australian governments. Finally, can I just draw to you the issue of surprise weddings? I don't know how big of a deal they are with you, but apparently they are such a big deal nationally that the government has, or the Attorney General's Department has devoted a whole section to this issue of surprise weddings in the marriage guidelines on the Marriage Act, and it's section 12.1 in the guidelines. And what they say is, what is a surprise wedding? A surprise wedding involves one of the parties to the marriage being surprised, either at or shortly before the ceremony. The most popular scenario involves one member of a couple wishing to surprise the other party by organising the marriage without their knowledge, and then presenting them with a complete ceremony as a romantic gesture. And the Attorney General's Department says authorised celebrants must not participate in such ceremonies. This is because there is no guarantee that the marriage will be valid, and there's 2 reasons for that. Firstly, the surprised partner would have had no opportunity to sign the notice of intended marriage, and so therefore the thing cannot be recognised under law. Secondly, because of the pressure of the situation, there's no guarantee that either party would be giving their complete and free consent to the marriage, and therefore again under the Marriage Act it would be regarded as an invalid marriage. So no surprise weddings. Well, that's the end of my first attempt at doing an OPD video. I hope that you found it interesting and useful, and as I said, in future things will try and raise the production quality just a tad, and see what we can do. If you've got any questions, please get back to me, email me on keith@newlife.org.au. If there are topics that you think we should cover in future OPD videos, then again contact me and let me know what you think. Okay, God bless you all, and happy celebrating of weddings.